Thank you. So massive pull request, trunk-based development, and Ruby. So this talk started with the pain of long-lived branches. So like branches diverged from the main, horrible to merge, and code reviews like not being that good quality. Like small pull request is easy to review, and then when it gets large enough, then you lose the motivation to do it. And for context, where I developed this pain, so I'm Vesa Vänskä, Rubyist for 15 years, web enthusiast since 10 years old, and I work for Kisko Labs. And we are a software agency building new products from scratch for our clients, but with our own team. So kind of like consulting with a product house approach, and quite small team, so not like hundreds of developers. And how did the branch merging get so painful? And at least for me, it was really Git. And I used to use Git back in the day, like install it on my own server, but then truly it was this service, GitHub, that truly introduced it, and it used to look like this approximately back in the day when I started doing branches. And actually, I figured out that there's an open API for GitHub where you can get the date when your account was created. So mine was 2008, so you can just replace your username and see when you started using it. And I actually noticed that I joined GitHub 1 week before David Heinemeier Hansson, so maybe so maybe David wasn't reading Hacker News as eagerly as me, so it was 2008, March 10th, and mine was 3rd. And like, so with the GitHub, we got the GitHub flow. And like before Git, at least I used to use Subversion, where you really didn't do any branches, because they were like super heavy to do. And then like if you did branches, they were like very long-living branches, like took like months to do. Like otherwise you wouldn't want to do branches because they were so heavy to do. But then Git made branches cheap to create, and then GitHub introduced the whole pull request flow. So I guess everyone is used to this through GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or any service you use to share your code. So create a feature branch, then add commits there. Then when you think it's ready to be viewed by other developers in the team, you open a pull request, then discuss and review the commits, and then hopefully at some point merge and deploy. But what often happens is that this part here takes weeks easily if you're not careful, if you don't put the kind of like energy into keeping the branches short-lived. And then I bumped into trunk-based development, and kind of like the points shared about trunk-based development felt that like, hey, this could maybe help with my pains. Like, can I have a show of hands? Who has heard about trunk-based development before? It's maybe half, I would say, so quite a few. So in a nutshell, trunk-based development it's mostly related to source control, branching, really, but also a collaboration model. So relates to continuous integration very much, but focused on the source control. So collaboration happens in trunk, aka master, aka main, and on top of the trunk there are no long-lived branches. And idea being that branches are good, but long-lived branches are a big no-no, and then trying to resist the pressure to let the branches live for a long time, and then of course avoid the merge hell. So this is the scaled trunk-based development that also has the feature branches. So each committer, so we have the trunk there, then we are making these short-lived feature branches, like hours to a week maximum of lifetime, and then they flow through the pull request style code review, and then get merged to the trunk, and then releases to different environments are done from the trunk. And then there is the non-scaled style of doing it, where there are no feature branches. So you just push straight to trunk. And this is the model many kind of trunk-based development enthusiasts try to push that, no pull requests. You go straight to trunk and release from there. And then if we look here, there are just single releases. So there's the caveat that this talk is about services. So I'm really much a web guy, and I've never worked on software that is printed on DVDs and shipped to stores and so on. So if you are working on that kind of a project where you have different releases and then you have to release patches on those and so on, then maybe Git flow or some other process is more suitable for you. But for a service that has one live version in production, this talk is really concentrating on those kinds of products. And then you can get the idea that it will never work. It will be like a total chaos and outrageous idea that features will take months to build. How do you reconcile it with this idea that you're just pushing straight to main? Or broken code will go to production all the time. How could you keep it running with this style? Or we are not Google, so we heard yesterday that Google's SRE book is a great resource, but we are not Google, so does these things really apply to us? And no solution for you. But let's dig into this. So well, this feature will take months to build, and the branch really needs to be long-lived. For this, at least in the project I've worked on, feature flags have been a very good solution. So having features under development within conditionals that can be then enabled by setting flags. And kind of makes it possible to release half-done features to testing environment or even to production. So as a quick example, using the RubyGem flipper, here would be rendering HTML on the server side. So we have here, we're building a new feature for widgets, and then we add a feature flag here where called widgets, and then it checks and only renders if the widgets feature is enabled for the current user. And then we can enable through Rails console or through a fancy web UI the feature flags. So in this case, enabling it for a single user, enabling establishing some groups of like beta testers or your internal team or something like that, enabling it for the beta testers, or enabling it for a percentage of users. And so in this case, like 2%, we take 2% of the user pool and start showing it for them. Or in the end, when the feature is done, then you open it up for everyone and then hopefully clean up the feature flag code so it doesn't clutter the code base. And in the previous slide, it was for the view, but you can really do it anywhere in the code base. So for example, here, we are only adding the widgets HTTP endpoint, or let it be available if the currently signed in user from the session has it enabled. And you can use it like anywhere, like if it's API only, then don't include it in the documentation, don't include it in the serializers and so on. So you can really feature flag anywhere. And then this broken code will go to production all the time. For this, you really do need a continuous integration server. And I feel that like this is very common practice. Maybe we can have a show of hands. Like, do you use with your main project continuous integration server? I would say like not everyone, but most. And this is like a prerequisite for trunk-based development. Because otherwise, like when somebody pushes the trunk, you need to have a continuous integration server that runs your automated tests. So you also need the automated tests there written and then blocks the release process if the build is not green. But really, if you're not using continuous integration server, and even if you wouldn't be at all interested in the trunk-based development, I would still look into it, especially with Ruby and Rails. I think the barrier is quite low. Like if you've never done it, then of course there's like many things to learn, but still getting started with all the different services these days, it's like so much easier than it was 10 years ago to get started with this. Like, for example, source code platforms like the GitHubs and Bitbuckets and GitLabs, they all have platforms for CI. And then all the cloud hosting platforms, AWS, Google's cloud platform, Azure, they all have their solutions. And they're quite easy to get started. But OK, so we have the continuous integration server. But then also, I would challenge that, at least what I've seen, people should more spend time on the monitoring. So maybe a little bit less energy on reviewing changes and fighting with the long-lived PRs and trying to make everything perfect, and have more kind of like effort on getting visibility on what is actually happening in production. So like error monitoring is also, I would say, like you just have to have it, otherwise you don't have any visibility. But then also other kinds of monitoring, so that you know what is actually happening with the users of the software. And for that, I would suggest looking into active support notifications. So this is like an instrumentation API for Ruby, and Rails publishes all the different metrics using this API. So like when you're running Rails and you see stuff happening in the logs, that goes through the active support notification channel. So here are a couple of examples. So we can run code within a block. So here we're manufacturing a widget, and we add the widget ID as a metadata to that, and then we would run the code here, and then we would subscribe to the different events, and you can do pattern matching and so on, and push the event to some kind of monitoring solution. Or if we have failures, we could also just do single events without the block form. So here we have the name, starting time, finishing time, ID of the notification, and then the payload has the widget ID. And then after we have the subscription running, then we can put it to many different places, and like you mentioned in the SRE talk, there are so many different platforms, from small products to huge ones. And I encourage, so here, this is the AWS one. So easiest way probably with this is to write to the AWS CloudWatch logs, and then set up these different charts to look at for specific events, so that then if you can always come to your dashboard and see what's happening with your service. And it's really not that much work to get this increased visibility for your team. And then there's the "we are not Google" argument. And I think this has probably been, for me, the biggest change in my outlook. That previously I maybe thought that the techniques were something that are only for the large teams, but I guess the libraries have come forward and the different platforms have come forward. So I think these techniques are viable to any size team these days, and also the main topic, trunk-based development, is viable for any size team. And also, like Matt mentioned, productivity is a big kind of focus for Ruby, and I think Ruby is one of the best languages to apply these techniques in. And then, at least for me, what kind of fooled me was that people keep talking about this CI/CD. It's this monolith of a thing, and I think it should be maybe more continuous integration, and then you do it, and that's a great thing, and maybe possibly at some point you do continuous delivery. The continuous delivery people who advocate it, they're saying that oh, it's so great, and it's not that hard. But at least to me, the continuous delivery, so continuous integration, everybody integrates their work all the time to the same common trunk, and then continuous delivery releases going out automatically when continuous integration is happening. And I feel that there's very big gap between these two, that you can very happily develop software with continuous integration, and it will solve a lot of your problems, but then making the leap to continuous delivery is quite large, and you shouldn't be kind of fooled into the idea that either you do this CI/CD pipeline, the whole big thing, or you do nothing. You can actually pick the things that help you. And in general, when you think oh, what should I do? I think well, then here's the quote, "Any improvements made anywhere besides the bottleneck are an illusion." So it's from Dr. Goldratt, who's this kind of lean manufacturing guru. But oh, okay, I'm here. That you need to figure out the bottlenecks of your own team, and then maybe like read about the techniques or like the techniques you heard here, and then apply the ones that fit you. Because like you have the pipeline, and if you optimize other parts of the pipeline than the ones where you have issues, then nothing will happen. You will get discouraged, and then you're just like, oh, like trunk-based development is horrible. Like, didn't do anything good for me, and probably doesn't do for anyone else. So if you don't have this issue of long-living pull requests, then maybe you don't have to do anything. Just rock and roll and have fun with your team. But then when you bump into the issues, you know that there is this kind of like thinking about what to do. And for example, the Rails Grande Jefe thinks that large, long-running pull requests are great, and I hope his team also agrees with him. But well, his point being that like doing the review for the pull request where you can barely see the browser scroll bar is actually like a good thing, and you get like a very holistic view and so on. So it's not necessarily bad. But I was thinking like trying to figure out like is it really a problem on a larger scale? And there's this State of DevOps report, and DORA metrics, which stands for DevOps Research and Assessment Team. So like maybe another show of hands, who have bumped into State of DevOps the report or DORA metrics? Okay, so not that many, maybe like 1/10. So I quickly go through this, or maybe like the State of DevOps survey is this big survey, and it has like tens of thousands of replicants every year, different size of organizations, and then they produce white papers, and they've written multiple books about the survey results and so on. And then these DORA metrics are like one of the fruit of the survey. And the idea is that they ask questions about like 200 different subjects, and then they've done analyses, and they think that these 4 metrics are the 4 ones which you should pay most attention to, because optimizing these metrics will help you reach kind of like the other things. So instead of kind of like being a are you using like source control or not? Are you using CI or not? Are you using this and that? Just optimizing these metrics will guide you towards the like right tools. So the metrics are deployment frequency. So how often organization or a team successfully releases to production. Lead time for changes, so the amount of time it takes a commit to get into production. So when somebody is developing, and then they do the commit and they push it, how long does it take to reach production? Then change failure rate, which is the percentage of deployments that cause a failure or outage in production, and then time to restore service. So how long it takes a team to recover from these failures in production. And well, I don't know, like when I'm thinking about this, at least for me, trunk-based development could be, or it's at least quite directly related to these metrics, or it does affect these, at least in some way. And then I've read the survey results before, but now when preparing for the talk, I checked the results, and then initially I was like a little bit surprised, and then a little bit kind of like, oh, like, is this really the state we are in, kind of like our industry? And then like, I don't know, like some people live this way like every day. So it was kind of like an emotional roller coaster for me. So they divided to tens of thousands of replies, and then they divide those into low, medium, and high. They used to have elite back in the day, but they removed it. I don't know. I guess we don't have elite organizations anymore. But for deployment frequency, if you deploy once per month to production, you're medium tier. And then for lead time changes, if a commit takes a month to reach production, you're medium tier. So you're doing like quite well. Like from the point where somebody pushes a commit, it reaching production in 1 month. That's like good medium. Then time to recover service. Your service goes down, taking a couple of days to get it back up. That's like okay. And change failure rate. If every 5th release to production causes service outage, you're medium tier. And I guess you being here probably puts you already quite high. You're like interested in even though you maybe not have heard of these DORA metrics, you're interested in having a quality service. But at least to me, this sounded like the state of the industry is such that these kinds of techniques could maybe be valuable. So I would really encourage everyone to start experimenting. And when I say experimenting, I mean that like doing single step at a time, not kind of this like, oh, there's a new methodology. I'm gonna take the methodology and change everything, have like cancel all the old meetings, do everything differently, but take like a small bit, like first figure out the bottleneck, then see that like, hey, like at least this is advertised that this could help my team with this, and then implement that. And then like like the biggest resources, I would say, there's trunkbaseddevelopment.com, which has a lot of material, and this was very kind of like high level, so they have collected different techniques on how to help you keep the branches short-lived, and then there's a link to the latest state of DevOps report that you can go and see. And then Kisko has a booth in Brella, so you can go there to talk, or here we have plenty of Kisko people here, so come and talk about these topics. So thank you.
Thanks, Vesa. It's a great reminder always, like it's kind of no news, but improvement takes place always at the bottlenecks, but it's a good thing to remember. Plenty of questions,
okay.
So let's go. What is your process for cleaning up obsolete feature flags, e.g. when making a feature available for everybody?
Well, I think there's no kind of like, it's not super urgent to clean them up, since when you kind of like enable them, then everything is running fine. But at some point, if you don't have, so I would wait for some while so that it's sure that like, okay, like it's released, we want to keep it there and so on, and then clean them up.
How do you tackle long-running work which can be put behind a feature flag, like a breaking Ruby Rails/Rails upgrade?
Well, usually in those cases, I don't know if I think we've done sometimes with the big, when you need to upgrade Rails or Ruby, have it so that you can boot it in both modes and then run both nodes. And in general also, I think building kind of like new version on the side is totally like valid tactic. So not trying to turn something that looks like A and then turn it into B, but having the A running and then just like build a new B and then swap them. So not trying to modify the existing thing, but building a totally new thing on the side, and switching can be a good way to kind of like tackle these like huge changes that need to happen. But of course, like sometimes it just might not be feasible. That is totally possible.
Thank you. For large features deploy strongly linked to existing code, how do you avoid that your code gets cluttered with endless conditionals when using feature flags?
Well, I guess it's the cleaning up part, and really like I think you need to do a couple of mistakes to figure out like where is the kind of like boundary, like how to do it and when to apply it, when to build something new on the side and swap it, or when to try to use the feature flags for that.
And now we go from we're not Google to we're Google level things. From Manuel, how to handle the overhead of hundreds of developers introducing feature flags in dozens of projects?
I don't know.
Thank you. He's a Finn.
I was thinking that like I'm here, and then like the build kite people are here, and Shopify people are here, and like I'm sorry, this talk wasn't for you. I think you probably have everything like so well, and you have an infrastructure team and SRE team and so on. That it must be like a wonderland. But this was maybe for us like poor little people who who don't have this.
From Julian, you mentioned enabling flags through the Rails console or the web UI. How would you monitor/log that so that other devs know what is live for whom? Migrations?
Yeah, you can have like a change log, or kind of like keep that as part of your process if you do any kind of like deployment calendar thing. Then having the enabling of the feature flags there, but it's I don't think there is kind of like some consensus that like this is the way to do it in all the teams. So it's kind of like depending on like how many feature flags you have, how big the team is, how many teams you have, and so on. So at least I can't give kind of like a clear answer how to solve that.
Thanks. How do you make it possible for your testers to test only a specific new feature?
Well, you would enable it for the testers, and also depends like how do you run your test environments. So do you have like different QI environments and so on? So for those, it could be that you always have all the feature flags enabled, but yeah, it depends very much on the environment.
How does trunk-based development work with projects that are worked on by a large number of developers at the same time?
Well, Google is using trunk-based development, and I think they have quite a few developers. So I think it can be done, but then you do need additional tooling because of like the CI runs and so on. So if it gets like too clogged, then you need to have some automation. And I guess these like larger teams, they all do have kind of, at some point people don't merge themselves anymore, but it's more of a, like they tell a bot to do the merging, and then the merges get scheduled and so on. So you have to kind of like then do a bit more additional work.
Let's finish with a couple of quick ones, I think. What are your preferences for continuous integration servers?
GitHub Actions. Like I'm in GitHub anyway all day long, so like, and I think it also has like quite good selection of ready-made actions, at least for like the Ruby and JavaScript work I do for the web stuff. So don't have to do that much work myself.
And the final question coming from Dmitry. Are you aware of any other worthy alternatives to trunk-based development?
Well, GitHub Flow, I guess. So, and like what you should read the DHH's blog post. Like, I don't really buy all of his arguments, but maybe you do. So it might be still like a solid development process.
Excellent. Everybody, Vesa Vänskä, thank you.